What's going on, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Rutgers Rundown podcast. Episode 12 coming up for you today. Got a lot to talk about. As always, Rutgers football had their spring game this past weekend, along with the NFL draft, where some familiar names to the banks were selected. And then, of course, we'll get into a little bit of the spring sports with baseball, softball, men's and women's lacrosse, and a little bit more transfer portal news coming via the men's basketball team. But Matt, we'll start first with Rutgers football. So the spring game happened this weekend, the annual Scarlet versus White game. And, you take what you can from that game. Obviously, it's just a scrimmage, but some promising things. Not as many starters in that game this year as last year, but one guy that really stood out to me was A.J. Serace. Granted, he knows he's not going to be the starter this year, but next year, this job seems to be all his. And in the spring game, 220 yards, a touchdown, and he was 15 of 24 throwing the ball, and he looked pretty solid.
Yeah, something that's good for Rutgers standards. That for a while, the past couple of years, there hasn't really been a consistent quarterback. Of course, Ethan was one of the first. Okay, this is our guy, which is good to know. Now he's returning, and then now in the future, A.J. Serace could definitely take that job over from Ethan Calicmanis when he graduates. So it's good to know in your mind that maybe, hey, this guy's going to be our guy. And of course, it's the spring game. I'm pretty sure Sean said, he was good, but it's a spring game. That's not really, a great way of, seeing what he's made of. But it's still good to see, and you're right, he had a good game. So, hey, there's still hope there for him.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, some other names kind of stuck out. Vernon Allen III, 5 catches for 98 yards, was kind of a favorite target for Serace. Both, haven't really seen the field, as Allen is a freshman and Serace is, I believe, a redshirt freshman this year. But, guys were out there. It was nice. It was nice to see finally. Ethan Calicmanis did not play all that much. I believe he played one offensive series, was 2 of 6. Jayshon Benjamin also with a decently solid game, 10 rushes, 44 yards, nothing crazy. But yeah, it's always nice to see Rutgers Nation back out there. It's also always nice to see football going on. But I think the bigger news out of this past weekend is the former Scarlet Knights who were drafted. So we got 3 players who were drafted. First up, you had Robert Longerbeam being selected by the Baltimore Ravens with the 212th pick. With the 224th pick, the Houston Texans took Keontae Hamilton. And with the 233rd overall pick, the Chicago Bears drafted the one and only Kyle Monangai.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. Obviously, it's the most Scarlet Knights in the draft since 2013 when 7 were taken. So it just shows that the program has really improved again over the past couple of years with Shiano, of course. And yeah, we all knew, Longerbeam and Hamilton was a little bit of a surprise, you could say, but you knew he would probably go to the NFL. But, Monangai obviously much deserved than Longerbeam. One of your personal favorite players, Nick, obviously.
Well, I've had the opportunity to speak to him quite a few times.
Yeah.
Great player, great person, great player. So nice to see. I will say, not happy it was the Ravens as a Steelers fan, but still fun to see him and his teammates get into the league.
Yeah, really awesome stuff for Rutgers, and of course, we're going to touch into it now, but also the undrafted free agents, 6 Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, that was... So I think one of the bigger... I don't want to say question mark, but one of the bigger surprises, that's the word I'm looking for, was kind of some of the guys that didn't get drafted. And I think out of all of them, the first that comes to mind was Holland Pierce. Pierce was at one point projected to be the highest ranked Scarlet Knight as far as the draft goes. But he ends up going undrafted, signs an undrafted free agent contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we also had Desmond Igbinosun signing with the Baltimore Ravens, Shaquan Loyal signing with the Cincinnati Bengals, Tyreen Powell signing with the Saints, Eric Rogers signing with the Chargers, and Dymere Miller staying in Jersey, signing with the New York Jets.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what they can do throughout training camp and mini camps, and see, kind of who is able to crack a roster. Because it's one thing if you're a draft pick. I feel like if you're later in the draft, it's a little more of a question. But if you're earlier on, you kind of know you're going to be on the roster. But,
yeah,
when you're an undrafted free agent or even a 6th and 7th round pick, you never know what can happen. But hopefully we'll see. And listen, Rutgers does it again somehow. It's defensive back university. They had one defensive back drafted and 3 defensive backs sign as undrafted free agents. I mean, if there's one thing that Rutgers does well, it's well, I'd say 2 things. They produce pretty solid running backs, and they produce some pretty solid defensive backs as well. I think the interesting thing was Dymere Miller, the only skill position offensive player to be signed as an undrafted free agent from Rutgers, and only one of 2, offensive players, the other being Holland Pierce.
Does that surprise you?
Yes, but no. I think for the class that they had, no. I know a few other guys were invited to certain training camps and stuff. I know Christian Dremel was invited to Giants camp, I believe. And, no, it doesn't. But it does at the same time.
When I saw it, I was like, oh, Jets, wow. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's going to be hard. It's not hard, but, he's going to have to work his way into the team if he wants to play. But, it's still a start. And I was pretty shocked to see Dymere Miller. I mean, we know coming to Rutgers from Monmouth how he had such a great season over there. And, of course, you're going from that to the Big Ten. So it's definitely a big step up. But, yeah, I mean, I'm a little surprised. I'm surprised.
I mean, listen, he held his own, Dymere Miller, that is, last season. And he led the team in both yards and receptions.
Yeah.
And also had the most receiving yards in a season since 2015 for Rutgers. So it was a solid season. Did I think going into this that he was one of the guys to look out for in the draft? Probably not.
No, yeah.
But good for them getting the undrafted free agents. And we'll stick with kind of similar news as transfer portal and men's basketball picks up yet another transfer heading into the 2025-2026 season.
Yeah, they bring in center Baye Fall from Kansas State. He was highly touted out of high school, Nick. He was a McDonald's All-American and the top 30 recruit, a 4-star. Went originally to Arkansas, but didn't really work out there. He played 45 minutes there in 9 games, scoring just 9 points and 12 rebounds. So didn't have much time at all. 9 games, 45 minutes. You do the math. That's not many minutes at all per game. Then went to Kansas State, which was last year, and that was even lower. 4 games, 26 minutes, 10 points. So he has 2 years of eligibility left. But the thing is, is this the guy to replace Cliff at the center? Obviously, it's not. But Rutgers are going to have to develop this guy. I mean, look, clearly out of high school, there was high hopes for him. It didn't work out in college. He's barely played, anything at all. So to throw him in the mix to be, hey, you're going to be our starting center next season, good luck. That's kind of a lot on his shoulders. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be him for Bully for the starting role.
Well, it's the same thing that Rutgers did last year. Let's not beat around the bush. It's the same thing they did. I mean, granted, Ogbole had been here previously, but still, they said, hey, listen, you're going to be the center. And then when he went down, they did it to Lathan. They said, hey, you're going to be the center. There was no rhyme or reason to how they made the decision. It was just, hey, we need you. You got to go. And to your point, this is not the kind of player that you could just say, hey, we need you. You got to go.
Yeah, 13 games in 2 seasons. It hasn't even played the minutes are low.
I'm not going to get into the whole rant of Rutgers in the transfer portal. They're filling holes. Obviously, you would like to see them get some kind of Power 5 or Power 4 transfer. But it just seems more and more that the way the portal is going and the funding, I guess, that Rutgers has, they just can't bring in a big-time recruit or a big-time transfer. It's just not in the cards. They're going to have to recruit. And, again, after this past season, who knows what it'll be. But at the very, very least, they're filling the holes that they needed to fill.
So 71 minutes, 13 games. That's good for an average of about 5.5 minutes per game.
71 minutes in his career?
Yes.
Over 2 years?
Yes, 13 games, 71 minutes.
All right.
Total. So he's, very, very inexperienced. I don't know. I don't know if it's an upgrade from Ogbole. I don't know, honestly. I mean, Ogbole had his moments, but that's the thing. What's going to happen here? Who's going to get the starting role? I think that's when Pike will use, obviously, non-conference the games to figure this out and kind of test both of them. Kind of how we saw, Martini play center at times in non-conference games instead of Ogbole last year. I don't know. It's hard because this is a recruit, again, that, out of high school that a lot of programs are looking at. And he went to Arkansas and then went to Kansas State. So, it's not like coming from a bad school. It's just that he hasn't played at all.
Yeah, no, and I think, especially when you look at it and you look at the conference that he's coming to, Big Ten is a very physical game. The Big Ten is not going to be flashy, 105 to 98 games. No, it's going to be a grind you down 68, 63 games.
Slugfest.
And, a lot of teams that have had success coming out of the Big Ten over the past 5 years have been anchored by a really good center.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Rutgers, over the past 4 or 5 years, they haven't had a really good center.
Ever since Cliff left.
And again, I'm not 100% sure what the game plan is going into next year. But I think, honestly, if you're a Rutgers fan, you have to prepare for the worst and be happy with anything else, because it's just not adding up right now.
If you ask me, like right now, Monday, April 28th, how will that center position be by this time? Like next year, sitting here, let's see if I was, how would it have been? Bad. I'm going to say they're going to have to struggle in the center next year.
Unless Akbole takes some big steps forward, which we haven't seen him do yet, I don't know.
I don't have really that much hope.
We'll have to wait and see, and see if they make any more acquisitions.
I think they're looking for like one more wing, like another wing, kind of like guy that could shoot threes, because they need 3-point shooting.
There's a guy out there that still doesn't have a team.
I know who you're referring to.
To be fair, Jeremiah Williams in the post it said that the Rutgers had reached out to him regarding the transfer portal. So you never know.
Man.
Maybe.
That's like quitting a job and you still find a new job, and then your job comes back and you're like, you want to come back? Like, I just left. Why would I want to come back? I mean,
I'll put it to you this way: I wouldn't put it past Rutgers. I would not put it past Rutgers in the slightest. Is he the best option? No, but. Is Rutgers in a position where they could sit here and say, we need the best option? No, they're not. And you could see that with who they've gotten in the transfer portal so far. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where you go from here. And I know it's a few recruits coming into next season.
Yeah.
I want to say, like couple 3 or 4 stars?
I think there's 3 stars. Lino Mark, was that Chris Newell, Caden Powers. I think there's one more, but I'm blanking.
But we shall see. Should be an interesting basketball season, to say the least. But luckily for fans, we don't have to watch that until November, December of next year.
Still got some time, guys. We got football first.
Yeah, we do have football, which again might be a tough season, tough schedule. But we'll move on to some sports currently going on. We'll get over to Rutgers baseball, who went on the road out in Ohio this weekend to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes, taking 2 of 3 games, winning their first Big Ten series of the month of April. And it was another series where you looked at Rutgers and you're like, you could be so good. And then you look at other games and you're like, oh boy, what happened? They win the first game 17-4, they lose the second game 16-8, and they win the third game 13-5.
Yeah, I mean, this team is up and down. Like, that's pretty much it. I mean, first game, you run rule them. You run rule Ohio State. And granted, Ohio State had just 2 Big Ten wins going into the weekend series, and now they have one more, so 3. So sitting at 3-18 overall in the conference, I was telling you, Nick, you gotta sweep the series, and they didn't do that. But I mean, hey, still take 2 out of 3. And now Rutgers is literally right on the cusp of a Big Ten tournament spot. They're 9-12, tied with 9-12 in Big Ten play, tied with Michigan State, Nebraska, and Northwestern. So all those teams are right on the cusp. I think it might go to head-to-head after that, whoever won the series. I don't know. But they're right on the cusp. So, after this series, you got 2 back-to-back Big Ten series at home against Illinois and Penn State, respectively. So, Illinois is also kind of right there with them, and Penn State's higher up. So it'll be a little tough. But I don't know. Maybe you can get some wins together and get kind of in the tournament.
Yeah, it's crazy to say that this team is kind of right there with some of the bottom teams in the Big Ten, if you will, and still holding on to a chance at making it to the Big Ten tournament. I get it with the expanded schedule, but 20-24, 9-12 in conference play, I guess. I mean, listen, I'll say this. I said if Rutgers could be 500 by the end of the season with around a 500 record in conference play, you take that as a win. And you know what? I'll give them credit. They're inching back towards that. But again, it comes down to consistency. And say it every time, but the only real consistency is 4 players as far as bats go. Trevor Cohen, Ty Doucette, Peyton Bonds, JT Thompson. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there's not a whole heck of a lot of consistency. And then even when you go to pitching, I mean, Landon Mack, the freshman, is the only real consistency you've had on the mound. Other than that, you have, I don't even know. I mean, Justin Shattuck is your other weekend starter who has a 7.29 ERA. I mean, I feel like they're doing the best with what they have. And it's not even that this team isn't good. It just not every facet of the game can be there at the same time. It seems like one thing's on and one thing's off. There's never complementary baseball being played.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's only a few guys to look at when you need something. When you need someone to step up, there's only a few guys to look at. So if one person's stepping up, it's going to be hard. I don't know. I think kind of like women's basketball, if this team makes a bigger tournament, that's going to be seen as, a good season, you could say. Maybe not a good season, but hey, it wasn't terrible. And like you said, we knew going to the season it was going to be tough. A very, very different roster. A lot of roster turnover with some players graduating, some players, leaving, whatever, what have you. But, I mean, last year, listen to this, they were 6-18 in Big Ten. And this year they're 9-12, so they already surpassed the win total, actually, if you think about that. I guess if you want to look at something positive, that's something you could say is positive.
Well, to further your Big Ten or your women's basketball point, you had more wins and conference wins than you had last year. Or not wins, but conference wins than you had last year.
Yeah.
You're kind of on the outskirts looking into the Big Ten tournament with an outside chance. A lot of crossovers.
There you go.
We'll see. We shall see if they can get a trip out to Omaha. We'll move over to softball now. Softball, a big weekend. Their first Big Ten Conference Series win of the year. Just their second and third overall conference victories. And, again, it was on the backs of one player, their star pitcher. Because other than that, Matt, I mean, some heroics in the last game of the series with a late, I don't know if it was late, but a grand slam.
It was late, 6th inning.
Off the bat of Stephanie Kroska, her first collegiate home run. I mean, what a spot to do it in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd say for Rutgers softball, obviously it was a really tough, this has been a tough season. But, you get your first Big Ten series win of the year, and it's a pretty special weekend. You have, like you said, Ella Harrison recording her 200th career strikeout. She already has the most in a season. She's just continuing to add to her, impressive freshman campaign. And like I said in the past week's episode, she's gonna get better and better. I was actually looking, I think yesterday, at the fact book for strikeouts, and she's already probably like top 10, I think, in Rutgers, or top 9 in softball history.
Yeah, I
for
believe
the program.
it is. I believe it's top 9. She is.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the actual.
And
right now, but
even more impressive as dominating the Rutgers record books, she's up there with some of the best in college or in the Big Ten. The only player that has more strikeouts than Ella Harrison this season is Jordy Ball from Nebraska, who has 218. So she's right behind her, and I mean, just what a feat to accomplish as a freshman. You're the first player in program history to amass 200 strikeouts in a season. You're just throwing gems each time you go out there. You have one of the, I want to say, top 10 ERAs in all of the Big Ten. Currently Ella Harrison has the 8th best ERA in the Big Ten. And really, if she had a little more run support and a little more defensive support, this is a player that's winning. Let's see, she's pitched 31 games. She's winning at least 18 to 20, if that's the case.
Yeah, just looking at the strikeout record real quick. So the 10th most is 204 from Sharon Martin. So, I mean, she'll definitely get 10th. Then 9th is 241. So I think she could probably finish at least with the top 10 by the end of the season. And the most is 642. So she's
going to have to average pretty much what she's done already.
Yeah.
Through 3 seasons, if you will.
But I think there's definitely a case for her to at least finish top 3 or top 4. Fourth is 392. I think she can get there.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, in 3 more seasons, that's half of this season, you know?
Yeah. She'll definitely be up there in the program record books when she's done on the banks. Just, she's definitely someone to look out for the future for Rutgers softball.
Without a doubt. And again, I think the bigger question now for that team is how do you keep her here?
Yeah.
Because she can go down, as we said, as probably one of the all-time great pitchers in Rutgers softball history if she stays.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Rutgers softball, that is, they'll be home against Monmouth before traveling out to Iowa to take on Iowa. And that's actually the last series of the year for softball, is this upcoming weekend against Iowa, and then the Big Ten tournament, if they make it. And speaking of Big Ten tournaments, we'll move over to women's lacrosse, who went down to Maryland over the last week to take on none other than Maryland in a pretty tightly contested game in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. They lose 17-11. I know the scoreboard says differently, but up until the fourth, Rutgers was hanging tough, but Maryland came out of nowhere. 6 goals in the fourth to really wrap things up. Corey Edmondson, another huge game. 4 goals, 2 straight hat tricks against Rutgers. Just one of the best players in the Big Ten.
Yeah, a tough end to the season for Rutgers women's lacrosse. They had a really good run in the middle of the season, and I was thinking, maybe they can actually pull together a pretty special season. But end of the season, regular season, a 5-game losing streak, so heading to the Big Ten tournament, it's obviously going to be tough, on that losing skid. And like you said, they played Maryland pretty close. Fourth quarter was a different story, obviously, with Corey Edmondson having another great game. But, you look at the season overall, 8-10 overall, 2-6 in conference play. Make of that what you will. It's same record from last year, just one more win in Big Ten, and then in 23 as well. Another tough year, 8-9, 1-5 in conference play. So the team's been consistently, just barely below 500, you could say, and kind of towards the bottom of the Big Ten. I don't know. It's like, how do you want to assess the season? Because I think there is a lot of positives, and I think it could have been better. But also, you lose Cassie Spillis, who was the program's best player of all time. You have a lot of freshmen step up, so that's where there's more hope for the future, where a redshirt freshman like Samantha Swanovich scoring 16 goals, and you got Delaney Sutley leading the team, second most in the team with 23 now. But, there's a lot of young talent in the team, so there's still hope for the future.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, Rutgers jumped out to a quick 2-0 lead, but then obviously when you play a team as good as Maryland, that 2-goal lead is nothing. Mm-hmm. But played them real tight. Unfortunately, don't come away with the victory and end their season. But I would have to agree. I think this season you look back on and you say, listen, for all that we lost, we did a pretty dang good job of putting together a respectable season. You hang tough with Maryland for 2 games, and if it's not for that, kind of stretch, that losing stretch, you probably see yourself as a much higher seed in the Big Ten tournament. You probably at least make it to the next round. And who knows? I mean, are you going to beat a Northwestern? No. Northwestern is probably going to go on to win the whole thing.
They did win the one.
They did that. Yeah, that's what I mean. They're going to go. They went
win.
You
mean NCAA tournament?
Yes.
Go on to win that too.
I think there's a very good chance they go on to win that tournament as well. But I think the takeaway from it is that, listen, you made it to the Big Ten tournament. You didn't play terrible. You held tough, and ultimately you lost a tough game to a really good team.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's a few in that losing scale, like the loss to Penn State, you lose by 2 goals. The loss to Michigan, you lose by 3 goals. The USC game, you were right there, and then the fourth quarter, you give up 6 straight goals. So those are games that you look back and you're like, hey, we could have won those games if something went differently. So it was like you were completely blown out, like you were in the USC Northwestern game. For most of these games, you were there for most of the game.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, we'll move from women's lacrosse to men's lacrosse now, where Rutgers won its first round game of the 2025 Big Ten tournament against University of Michigan, defeating them 11-8. That means they move on to the semifinal round, where they will play against Ohio State in Ann Arbor this Thursday. Matt, you and I will be out there for coverage. But a nice win for Rutgers, especially after a very disappointing performance against Penn State to end the season.
Yeah, so this game, I had a feeling Rutgers was going to win because I'll take you back to a couple of weeks ago. After the Maryland win, first of all, that was a crazy win. So then you're thinking, okay, they play Michigan now. They could win that game. I remember sitting in this room or this spot right here and saying, looking after the Ohio State loss, I'm like, okay, that's a close game, but I'm like, you have to beat at least Maryland or Michigan now. I'm like, we're looking at Michigan, got to win that game. And then they beat Maryland, and I'm thinking again, wow, they could beat Michigan, and then maybe even Penn State and get a top team for the Big Ten tournament. Okay, obviously they beat Maryland, they barely lost to Michigan, and they got killed by Penn State, and I'm like, oh man, you end the season with that bad loss. That's gonna be a tough game against Michigan in Ann Arbor, and they're the host of the tournament. They're gonna want to have their whole run in this tournament. They're the home team. They're gonna want to play to the championship and win. And credit to Rutgers, man. They knock off the host of the tournament in Michigan. They avenge an earlier defeat to them in the season. And yeah, now they're playing Ohio State. And yes, Ohio State is ranked number 5 in the country, and I think they're the number 1 seed if I'm correct. They might be, they might not be. I'm pretty sure they are. Or maybe Maryland's number 1 seed. One of those two. But look, March 29th, you lost to them by 2 goals. And I remember that game was super back and forth. So, again, hey, don't count out Rutgers.
No, I don't think you should whatsoever, because they've proven that the tough games that they've lost, they can come back and beat those teams. Michigan's a prime example of that. They can win tight games against Maryland. You saw that with a historic win. I think Penn State was kind of the outlier, if you will.
You can say it's a fluke.
Yeah. I don't know if we would say a fluke, but I'd say an outlier, just because, granted, Penn State's a good team, but I don't think that's not the Rutgers team you saw in the previous few games.
Yeah.
But if they go in against Ohio State and they're able to play similar to how they played last time in Ohio, I have no doubt that this Rutgers team can go to the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, and that's something that's crazy to say because, again, I remember sitting here after that UMass loss on March 15th, and we were like, Nick, this season has completely turned into a failure. And I remember looking at that Big Ten gauntlet schedule, and I'm like, there's no way in heck Rutgers is winning more than 1 or 2 Big Ten games. And hey, they won 2 Big Ten games, which is definitely good. We only got 5 games in the Big Ten, so it's definitely, a very small sample size. So getting 2 Big Ten wins is really good. And also considering every single team is ranked. And they could have had 3 if they beat Michigan at home. That was a close one too. So if they make the Big Ten championship, and even if they lose on Saturday or Thursday, this season was by no means a failure. There were so many good wins on the schedule and other games that could have been wins if things just went your way and you actually played up to your standards that you have. And again, another thing I want to say, I always sound like a broken record, but there is also hope with this team too. Colin Cadill is an absolute beast. Carden Stoller is an absolute beast. You got some freshmen who are really talented like JJL, Hayden Summer. There's a lot of talent. So I think, again, just continuing to grow and develop this team.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is you have to take these seasons as development seasons. But at the same time, there's no doubt in my mind that this team could make a run. I'm not going to sit here and say I think they're favorites to win the Big Ten tournament whatsoever. So. But you know what? Even with that win against Michigan, Rutgers bumped up to number 17 in the rankings. So you never know. If you win another game and lose the Big Ten tournament, you might find yourself moving up one spot. You're the 16th best team in the country, and maybe you find yourself in the NCAA tournament. You never know. It's been so weird because Rutgers went from completely out of it to they're right in the mix after they beat Maryland to out of it again. And now it seems like with possibly 1 or 2 more good performances, they could be playing in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think, well, I was going to say, if they win the Big Ten championship, obviously you automatically qualify. But I think if they win it, this is going to sound weird, but I think if they won it, they would guaranteed been in, regardless of that criteria. So I think if they win the Big Ten tournament, they'll be in it. Obviously they will, but that's what I'm saying. That will guarantee their spot. If they make the championship and lose a close game, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I think there's a case. But I think they have to be Ohio State first to want to make the tournament. I think that's guaranteed.
Yeah, don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Real quick before we sign off, we actually have some breaking news from the Rutgers men's basketball world. This is per Brian Fonseca of NJ Advanced Media. Haran Zarno, a 21-year-old sharpshooter, as he put it, who played professional basketball in Slavia, has officially signed with the Scarlet Knights. So another nice addition for Rutgers, as we were just talking about them.
Wow, that's really breaking news.
Yeah, very rarely do we get...
I can't even say his name.
Yeah, very rarely do we get breaking news like that as we record, so very cool to see that. But, yeah, I mean, so he was originally committed to Indiana prior to Mike Woodson's retirement. So they changed up the commitment. Now over here on the bank, staying in the Big Ten, but another pickup for the Rutgers men's basketball team. But with that, that's all the time we have for today. As always, stay tuned. Got a lot of stuff to wrap up in the coming weeks with the end of the semester and the end of the season. I want to thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can find us online at The Daily Targum and on The Daily Targum's YouTube channel. For Nick Hart, Matt Mangum signing off, episode 12 of the Rutgers Rundown podcast.